it definitely feels like we're coming up against a recession, although I've been feeling that way for like a year now. What exactly is going on with the American economy? Where do you predict it's going to go in the next year or so? And yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah, so you always need to be careful, and not you, but just economists in general. I think
Yeah.
it's a wise idea to be careful about predicting recessions, and here's why. You can actually make a ton of money if you've seen the movie The Big Short, even though there's some problems with the movie and what it blames the financial crisis on. The story of the movie is true that there were a group of people who made a lot of money off predicting the recession. And so anybody who tells you like a recession is coming, like the first thing you need to ask them is like, how much have you shorted the market? Because if they haven't shorted the market, they apparently know the recession's coming, but they don't want to get rich off of it, which seems a little bit backwards. So
Yeah.
anytime you know the future in the economy, you can make a lot of money. So anytime someone claims to know the future, but they haven't kind of put their own financial portfolio on the line, it's cheap talk, right? And so I haven't shorted the economy or anything like that. I am not certain of the timing of the recession, but here's what I do know, Maggie, is that we had a period of about a year, in some industries more, in some industries less, where we were engaging in consumption still, but people were buying goods, and businesses were producing goods to a certain extent, but they were, producing some things but not other things, and they were using their capital. So we had this period of
Mhm.
consumption without our usual amount of production because there were lockdowns, a lot of people were home and stuff like that. Whenever you have consumption in excess of production, just think of your personal budget, listeners at home. When is it possible for you to spend more than you take in terms of your income? And there's only two ways to do it. You either have to borrow the money or you have to eat out of your previous savings. And so during coronavirus, we did both of those things. We borrowed from the future and we ate out of our current stock of capital, those goods in the economy that produce other goods. And
Mhm.
now we're seeing all these problems with, people talk about supply chain issues. Well, of course, there are supply chain issues. We were using parts of our supply chain without replacing them or without improving them because all the improvements were locked down. They were non essential, right? And so that could translate into a market correction, which we would call a recession. It could also translate, and this is almost even a little more sinister, into just lower growth for a very long time. If you have a lower, 1% lower GDP growth for 20 years, the nice thing about interest rates is they compound, but also the terrible thing about interest rates is they compound. And so 1% growth lost, for 20 years, that's going to end up to be a very large number of economic well-being that we've left on the table because of our pandemic response. So it'll be one of the two. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, whether it's going to be a recession or whether it's smoothed over the next 20, 30 years and we're just a lot poorer as a society because of it. It's difficult to say which one, or probably some combination.
So what's the better outcome? Would you say just getting recession over with and trying to correct the economy the best that we can? Would that be the better option?
Yeah, insofar as like people made bad investments because the Federal Reserve was handing out money like, free candy or whatever, and they made investments in capital goods that aren't particularly useful, it would be good if those projects died because those projects represent like destruction of wealth. And so SVB is a good example of this. I'm glad SVB as a bank failed because every day they weren't failing, they were turning real wealth into basically nothing. They were shredding wealth. That's what happened to their bank. They shredded their depositors' wealth until they didn't have enough to pay back their depositors at any given time. And that can happen on an economy-wide scale if you allow a bunch of bad projects inspired by these really low interest rates that we had during COVID. I would rather the chickens come to roost now rather than later on those. And now different people will be affected differently. And so it's hard to say, for the whole world, what is the best option? There's probably not a good answer on that. But in terms of the economy, I would rather these bad investments get covered sooner rather than later.